Welcome to Leadership Lessons from the Fastlane, brought to you by the Washington Speakers Bureau. In this space, we will explore some of the most pressing challenges that leaders face today with the world's most respected, innovative, curious, and accomplished thought leaders. We'd like to welcome our host, best-selling author and co-author of the recently published book, Choose Love, Not Fear, a WSB exclusive speaker for almost 30 years, Gary Heil.
This is Leadership Lessons from the Fastlane. I'm Gary Heil. Today, we're honored to have with us Ron Rivera, the head football coach of the Washington Commanders of the National Football League. Ron is two-time Coach of the Year in the NFL and an ex-player who spent 9 years playing linebacker in the NFL. He is a cancer survivor, an outrageously good communicator who's dedicated to the development of people, not just as football players, but as members of the community who are more willing and more able to enrich the lives of others. Thanks, Ron. Thanks for coming with us today.
I appreciate it, Gary. It's nice to be here.
Hey, Ron, in our last conversation, one of the things that hit me is we talked about leadership sort of not as a bunch of tactics that you pick, but a reflection of who you are and what you believe and the values that you share. And that doesn't begin the development of us as leaders when we get our first job. It happens much earlier in life. Yours had to be affected a little bit by growing up in a military family.
It was, Gary, because I think right off the bat, I got a lot of examples of how things are done. And I think as you grow in an environment like that, you learn also what's considered the chain of command and how things should work. I think you put that together very quickly. For me personally, as I grew and watched, one of the greatest examples I had was my father. He was a career Army officer. He did 32 years in the United States Army, and we moved from one base to the other. And the one thing that was always similar from one base to the other was there was a certain type of chain of command, a certain type of discipline that was always the same, and it was always there. And so for us growing up, that was our example. That was just how things were done.
Yeah, and it moving every couple of years can't be easy.
One of the things about moving every couple of years, I had 3 brothers for the most part. So when you move as much as we did, the people you relied on were the people that was your family. I mean, mom and dad, but the 3 brothers, we all formed this bond. And so with Steve, Mickey, and John, the neat thing for me was, I had instant friends and instant teammates. And you learn to adapt, you learn to communicate, you learn to make friends. And I think it also helped me become a good judge of character, a good judge of a person's worth as to, who could really, somebody that I could really learn from, grow with, and develop.
And it's got to help you later in life when you've got to be likable every couple of years when you're a young guy trying to make your way on every ball club in a different venue every 3 years. Can't be easy.
No, it wasn't. And I think that's one of the things that really helped me because, going from one team to the other, learning to adapt and grow, learning to communicate. I think those were things that I use today because every year the roster is going to change about 35, 40%. And you've got to learn very quickly who your players are. And how to work with them, how to get them going, how to push them in the right directions, how to motivate them, but more importantly, how to get them to come together. Because again, when you have these many different personalities from all over the world, all over the United States, I should say, different colleges, everybody has to have the same goal, and that is everybody has the same commitment to the same goal. And that's probably the biggest thing that we have to learn and understand about each individual player. And what gets them to focus in on and share the vision that you have in order to accomplish this goal.
It seems to me that when you took over the Panthers, most people might not know, they were 2-14. Mm-hmm. And you took them up to a Super Bowl, but that's more than just change. That's a cultural transformation, it would seem to me. And, there's an old saying in our business that, that rebirth is tougher than creation. Changing a culture can't be easy. Can you give us a little idea about what you do when you walk in and you're seeing a 2-14 team and you're trying to get them to believe that we're going to the Super Bowl?
Well, first and foremost, you got to come in and you have to have a vision. It's interesting. One of the things that I learned very early in life is that, a lot of people dream about things. And the problem about a dream is it's a wish, it's a hope, it's a fantasy. People have to have a vision, and you have to have a clear-cut vision. The difference between a vision and a dream is a vision has a plan. It has an idea of how to get to there, to where you want to go. And I think the biggest thing that everybody has to understand is that the plan, the vision, has a goal, and the ultimate goal is to win a Super Bowl. Well, I came in with the idea and the attitude that, hey guys, we're going to build a sustainable winning culture more than anything else. And in order to do that, you have to make sure that you have people that are around you that share that vision, that believe in that vision, because quite honestly, if they don't believe in it, they're not going to be able to sell it. So right away, I wanted to make sure that the people that were there understood that this is what I believe in. This is how I believe we need to do it in order to win. And and by the way, I'm doing it from a point of experience, because I'd been through, I was a player, and I believe I understand what it takes to be successful as a player, because I did play on the 1985 Super Bowl Bears back in the day. So I was trying to draw on that experience and share it with the players.
And when you're starting to assess that commitment to your vision and you're starting to create a plan, those of us have been not in pro football, but in different parts of organizations doing that, realize that everybody's not all in right away, but you can't really be half in, can you?
No, to me, you're either all in or you're all out. And you're gonna have to decide that very early as a leader. I believe that when you start meeting people, the biggest thing that you have to do is you have to listen. I think the biggest mistake people do is they come in and people talk about, well, I'm going to communicate. Well, a lot of people think communicating is talking. I think it has to be listening first and foremost. You can tell them what you think, you can give them your ideas, you can share your vision, but then listen and watch and observe. Because people are going to tell you who they are. People are going to tell you what they believe, and they're going to tell you what they think, and they're going to tell you whether they agree or disagree. And those that don't agree, those are the ones you have to move away from. And the reason being is because, again, they won't sell it. If they don't believe in it, they won't sell. That's the worst thing you could have, is somebody that's there that's pretending and not really buying in, because you're going to have that voice of dissension at some point. The first time something goes wrong, see, I told you. Well, I don't want to hear that. What I want to hear is, hey, this is part of the process. We're learning, we're growing, we're evolving, we're developing, we're going through the process. Hey, we've reached beyond the process. Now we're where we need to be. And that takes time, but it also takes belief. If you don't believe in it, you ain't going to sell it. And I don't need that. And that's really what I did when I got in, was we had to find those that didn't believe, and we had to move away from them.
And as the leadership team that you're putting together, they not believe, they also have to, it seems to me, be passionate about it, right? If you're going to get people to follow you, if you're not passionate about where you're going, why would somebody else be? Absolutely,
because you do set the example, you do set the tone, you do set the standard, and that's one of the things I learned very quickly also, and I learned it from John Madden, of all people. I should say of all people. I learned it from John Madden. What had happened, Gary, my first 2 years as a head coach in Carolina, one of the mistakes I made as a head coach when I came in and put my coaching staff together, I didn't hire somebody that had head coaching experience in the NFL on my staff. So I didn't have anybody sitting there telling me what I needed to hear. Okay, I might have had some people telling me what they think I wanted to hear, but they weren't telling me exactly what I needed to hear. I didn't have that voice saying, hey, no, that's not right. Or, that's a great job right there, coach. Hey, think about doing this, coach. I didn't have that guy that could draw me a map because he had been there to tell me whether I was doing a good job or not. And so I learned very quickly that I was delegating the authority, but I hadn't set the standard. I hadn't told anybody, this is what I want, and this is how I want it, and this is why I want it that way. Because if you just tell somebody, hey, you're in charge of this, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do the best they can. And if it doesn't live up to your standard, it's below your standard, that's your fault, because you never set the parameters and you never set the standard as to what they had to do and how they had to get there and what you expected. And because I didn't do that early on, we made some mistakes. We didn't play the way we were capable of. But one thing I did make clear, and that was, it was on me. first and foremost. Okay, I have a way, I believe in this way, and what I need is for others to believe and buy in as well. And so once I got that straight, once we got things headed in the right direction, it really came together in our third season.
Well, you know, the standard is one thing, and what we think the standard is defined it by our own terms, like the best or excellent or whatever. But when you started, I think was it your rookie year, the '85 Bears? Was that your rookie year?
Well, my second season.
Second season, a historic team, right?
Right.
There had to be somebody who told you how high the bar was going to be.
Well, I will tell you this. I was fortunate. I played for Mike Ditka, Hall of Fame tight end. And Coach Ditka was a guy that pushed you and demanded so much from you. He really did. And he really got after you. And I can remember one particular instance, he was getting on us pretty hard. It was a pretty rough day during training camp. It was really hot out there. We were in Platteville, Wisconsin, up in the humidity and the heat, and it was pushing close to 100. And it was one of those days, and Coach was barking at us real hard. I remember going up to Coach a little bit after practice, said, "Hey, Coach, what's that all about? I mean, you really rode us hard today." He looked right at me and said, "You know, Ronnie, I would never ask you guys to do anything that I couldn't do." And when he said that, it's like the light bulb went off in my head, and the realization that this is a guy he's a Hall of Famer. So his standard, what he believes, what he's capable of, and what he believes we're capable of is really high. He set the bar real high, but just the realization that he believes we could do it, man, that really cleared a lot of things up for me. It really did. And it made me appreciate the fact that he thought I could get to there. So he pushed me, and I let him push me from that point on. Just the realization really helped me a lot.
Well, you know, in the psychology of it, what's really interesting, but the great coaches like you, Ron, is that we come in as players or we come in to work, and you guys push us to set the bar higher than we would normally set it for ourselves, because you teach us that we're better than we think we are, aren't we? Like, you can raise the bar higher than you think you can, and therefore we reach higher than we thought we could the day before. Isn't that part of it?
Oh, it is most certainly part of it, because I do believe that is that, you know, if I set the bar at a certain standard and I believe that standard is good enough and you exceed that, just think of how great you could be. And if I set the standard too low, we never get above it, that's on us because we haven't done enough. So I think it's a good measuring stick, and people that have been there, that are the voice of experience and know what it takes, I think we should be listened to, because again, it's that old saying, you know, hey, I can draw the map because I've been there.
I think that's right. And it's when you say it, what comes off in my mind is I've been asking people for the teachers they remember the most in school, and they never remember the easy ones. They never remember the ones that accepted anything. They remember the ones that kicked their butt a little and forced them to be better than they thought they wanted to be. And we remember them for a reason, right?
Yep, because they brought the best out of us. And I think that's important that people understand that at the end of the day, a good teacher, a good coach, you know, a good parent, for that matter, is somebody that will really push you to excel and to succeed. Now, at the same time, they're also there for when you don't, when you don't quite get to where you need to be, then you've had a little setback, because they're there, why, to comfort you and then to get you propped back up and push you again forward. Because I think we rely on people for that matter to be part of something special and to help us do something, and having the right mentor, having the right coach, the right teacher, parents for that, to me, that's very important, that you have somebody like that pushing you in the right direction.
Right. How about the idea that you've got a high performer, somebody who's really skilled? And most leaders find that no matter what they're doing for a living. You have the technical expert, the skillful player, but he's a cultural misfit. You know, somebody who doesn't quite buy the values, but is extremely talented. What advice would you have for somebody about that? Because we've all been there. We see the person who's not good with people, but he's good with accounting, or he's not good with people, but he's good at sales, right?
Yeah.
You must see that all the time with talented athletes that don't quite buy into the cultural stuff.
You do. And to be honest, there's a certain point where no matter what you do, no matter how you do it, they want to do it their way. You have to draw the line at some point and say, look, this is what we believe in, and this is why we believe in it. Okay. And they have to understand that these are your core values. Understand that if you can live within this framework of core values and be part of our football team, you can succeed. Why? Because we're asking you to do it our way. And we're the voice of experience. We've been there. And the reason we're asking you to do it our way is because we understand and we know what it takes. Now, if you do it our way and we have success, that all goes to you, okay? Because I'm going to lead from behind. We're going to push you forward. And when we succeed, that's what you get. Now, if we fail and you do it our way, hey, that's on me. Because why? Because it's our way. We're asking you to do it this way. Okay, so understand, these shoulders are broad enough. I'll take the responsibility. But if you do it your way and you fail, you have to be willing to step up and say, that's on me, because that's what I've done. That's the only way I've seen guys that really do it their way and have a tremendous amount of talent understand that by just taking that kind of pressure off of them, taking the responsibility and saying, do it our way. And hey, we'll be responsible for the failure, but you will get the success. I think players appreciate that, knowing that they can go out there and do their best and not worry about who's getting the blame.
Important. It doesn't work for everybody, right? There's
No.
the diva player that just doesn't want to play in the system, right?
Right. And when that happens, sometimes it's time to say goodbye. Sometimes it's time to move on, because again, that person may not fit. That person may not be the best fit. But at the end of the day, if he's not part of it, then you've got to move on, because all you're going to do is just keep going in a circle.
How many of those players you let hang out does it take to corrupt your football team?
You know, I know this. You can have only so many people that take your energy and your time. And once you get past whatever that number is for you, if it's 2, 3, or 4, okay, and you get past 4, now that 5th guy, and then you got to move on. You absolutely do. Some people really do believe that there is a number. And I really do think the fewer you have, the less you have. If you don't have to have any, you're better off. I really do believe that.
It's probably the case that most of the time when you let them go, you don't miss the problems, you just let go.
No, you don't. You really don't, because, you know, when people drain energy, okay, when people take your focus and your attention away from what really truly matters, okay, you're going to struggle, because they're taking you away from what's building the team, what's important to the team. Got a little saying I learned from a very good friend of mine from the military, basically saying this: don't make what's interesting important. You have to separate what's interesting from what truly is important. And so that's what I've found, that guys that want your attention, that's interesting, but this is what's important. So let's stay focused on the task at hand more so than anything else. And I think that people that want you to pay attention, to spend time, man, all they're doing is taking away from the opportunity to get better as a team, and really just lose focus on what's important to us.
And in the clubhouse, that can't be good as they're around carping and bringing that energy into the ball club. Can't be a good thing.
No, it's not. You know, it's been proven that it takes more energy, 3 times as enough energy to be a bad person, to have a bad attitude. It takes 3 times as much energy. It doesn't take much for positive energy to grow and to go from one person to the other. So let's stay focused on the positive things. Let's learn and grow and become better. And that's probably the most important thing as far as I'm concerned.
Some organizations just seem to have more success taking the talented, call them difficult player, and having them become productive and buying in and become members of the team. And so those of you who do that effectively are very, very different than most. Is it just giving them a chance to succeed that does that most of the time? Or is there a secret sauce to that?
I think the secret thing about taking guys that have a tremendous amount of a talent, but haven't really succeeded, is getting them to understand that by taking that talent and putting that talent to good use, to not just, you know, playing the game and shining as an individual, but how it impacts and affects the players around. They always say this: truly great players elevate the people around them. So you have to put those players in that position where they help elevate others, how they bring others up to their level. When that happens, that's when you're winning. That's when you're truly winning. That's when you're a really good team. And that is by having a very talented player that makes other guys around him better. But you got to make sure that that player understands that that's really one of the things that you're asking them to do. You're not asking them to go out there and score all the touchdowns or make all the tackles. You're asking them to go out there and do their job. I have a little saying that I've been telling our players for a long time. I don't need one guy trying to do 11 things. I need 11 guys doing one thing at a time. That gives you an opportunity to succeed. And when that one special player fits and understands that if I'm getting doubled, somebody else is making the play. If they're putting two guys on me, somebody else is scoring the touchdown. Somebody else is making the tackle. And I'm okay with that. Because again, it goes back to that good old saying, and that is, when the tide rises, so does all the other ships.
You know, there's a saying that all change begins with a change of the management teams personally, right?
Yep.
And that accountability begins with us being accountable for changing before we expect other people to change. I know that you've talked about accountability as being something that we ought to look in the mirror with first.
Absolutely. I really do believe that it does start with you. If you can't look in the mirror and say, you know, I got to change, I've got to get better, then you can't expect others to do so. And I think the thing that really has helped me more so than anything else is that one thing I've always tried to do is I've always tried to become better. I know that if I get better, the people around me will be better. Secondly, I can't be to the point where I'm not going to listen. And it really does come back to listening, because that's the only way we can get better is we listen. Whether you agree or disagree, at least you've listened and you've heard a different point of view, you heard a different perspective, and you can make a decision based on that. Not because it's the thing to do, not because it was hard, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And that's one of the really important things, is that we do things for the right reason, and the right reason alone really should take us and carry us into the right direction.
Well, what you're talking about too, with the learning aspect of what do we do in listening and asking the questions is really an interesting point, because it's one thing to talk about learning as if it's some euphoric thing we do, but the truth is most learning is stressful, creates anxiety. You're asking me to change my mind about something, Ron. So, you know, this idea of asking questions and listening of what did we do well, what did we mess up, what could we do better tomorrow, that can be pretty anxiety creating for a lot of people.
Right. But the thing about learning is you get an opportunity to improve and be better. Okay. And a willing change creates a lot of positive things. It really does. Why? Because people see growth. And when you grow, that means you're getting better at something. That means you create an opportunity to be even better than you were. And that is what is important to me, is that we grow to get better. Okay. We grow because we have a chance to. You know, it's one of those things too that's really explained by evolution. That is, if you don't adapt, if you don't change, if you don't grow, you're going to become extinct. And that's the truth of the matter, because this is a constantly changing world. You've got to adapt, and you've got to be ready to change. Now, there is some things that you don't want to change. Some things that say, hey, this is how we do it. We've done it very well. Okay. And we're going to continue to do it this way. But we also have to keep an open mind that as we do it this way, there may be a better way to continue to do it this way. There's more than, you know, just the opportunity to develop and change and be something different, but at the same time, not sell out on who we really truly are, what our core values are. Because at the end of the day, if we are struggling, what do we always fall back to, or what should we fall back to? Those are those core values. Those are what carry us and get us through the tough times. We can fall back and we can rely on those things, and we have to.
And, you know, one of the things, Ron, when you talk about going in and asking questions and listening, when you're asking questions that are, what do we do right? What do we do wrong? And you're modeling the learning, doesn't it go a long way when you're a head coach is asking for feedback and looking for what we did well and poorly, and it isn't about blame, it's about learning.
Yes.
That's that catches on. That's a modeling of the kind of learning you want at every level, right?
Most certainly. I think the biggest thing that people worry about and don't really think about is when you listen to answers, okay? You should, to me, when you're listening to answers, are people telling you what you need to hear, or are they telling you what they think you want to hear? Okay. And if you really pay attention and you think deeply into the question that you've asked, that answer will tell you everything you want to know, in my opinion. And it's like when you come in and you ask a player, hey, what happened on this play? And he starts to describe the play for you. Well, coach, I thought we came out. I like the formation to this side. I like the way we were setting that block. And as we started to come back into the play and I looked for the cut, it wasn't there. Well, why wasn't it there? Well, it wasn't there because I didn't read it right. And I keep thinking to myself, when you listen to this guy talk, he talks about the positive things and then he takes responsibility. He's not looking to blame anybody. He's looking to accept the responsibility. To a degree, well, he told me everything I wanted. We had it set up the right way. He didn't make the right judgment. So the great follow-up question would be, well, what did you miss? Why did you miss it? What can we do to help you see it? So again, it is really about listening and trying to understand what they're trying to tell you, more so than anything else. And to me, that's the kind of answer I'm looking for, because he didn't want to blame anybody. He wanted to accept the responsibility. I mean, that's a guy who can be a good leader for you.
The statement of, do they tell you what you need to hear versus what they think you want to hear, seems to me has another thing to it too, right? There are times as a leader when we need to hear the unvarnished truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And if people are so busy telling you what they think you want to hear, when that time comes and you're about to walk off the cliff and you need somebody to tell you the truth, you got to wonder whether they are or not, right?
Exactly. And again, sometimes, and I've learned this too, sometimes people don't want to tell you the truth because inside that truth might be their failure. And again, I'm not, when I go to people and I ask questions, specific questions, I'm not looking for who to blame. I'm looking for how to change it. Okay. As long as we accept the responsibility, okay, hey, I made a mistake and this is what I did. One of the things I loved about working for Andy Reid, I worked for Andy Reid when I was with the Philadelphia Eagles. I was on his original coaching staff. And one of the things that Coach Reid always used to tell us, more so than anything else, is if something happens, handle it, make a decision, and then come back and tell me later. And we'll talk about it. We'll talk about whether it was a good decision or a bad decision. But that's the only way you're going to learn and grow, by taking responsibility, making a decision, and going forward. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. And it was great learning, coaching, teaching, mentoring type of situation for us. And that's how I learned to grow, because I was given the opportunity to make mistakes or given the opportunity to do something right. And no matter how I looked at it, I learned from it. I grew from it. And to me, that's part of leadership. That's part of growth, is somebody willing to say, hey, this is what you didn't do. This is what you could have done. This is what you should have done. Or, hey, that was a great job. Because it's going to be one or the other. And unless you tell people what they need to know, what they should know, they're not going to be able to help you. They're not going to be able to help themselves either.
And what you just said, though, is the old saying, we learn more from our mistakes than from our successes. And success is a terrible teacher, but you have to be willing to own up to those misjudgments, those mistakes. If it's all about blame, I try to hide those mistakes sometimes. If it's all about learning in the culture, then the mistakes a stepping stone to being better tomorrow, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We learn through our trials and tribulations, and to me, if you're not willing to put yourself out there, you're not going to learn. What you're going to always do is the safe thing. It's interesting because when I reached out to John Madden and asked him to help mentor me, one of the things that Coach told me to do is, hey, I understand you have this record of being 3-13 in games decided by 6 points or less. Go back, take a look at those games, and tell me what you could have done differently. So I went back, I looked at those 13 games that we had lost by 6 points or less. And I wrote it out, put a nice big report together. I go out and I see Coach Madden. Sit down with Coach, and we were kind of talking back and forth a little bit about football. And then I said, oh, before I forget, Coach, I have this little book, this little report you asked me to do about the games being 3-13 and going back and seeing what I could have done differently. And he looked at me and goes, oh, that wasn't for me. That was for you. What did you learn? I said, well, the biggest thing I noticed is I did things by the book. And it just didn't work out that way. You know, I might have been able to, you know, call a different call here or make a different play over here. You know, I could have made another decision to punt or made a decision to kick or go for it. But I went by the book. And he looked at me and said, Ron, what book? I said, well, you know, like here, we were up by 3. We were on their 20-yard line. And it was 4th and a yard, and we kicked a field goal. We went up by 6, but then they went down, scored a touchdown, beat us by 1, kicked the extra point. And he goes, well, why didn't you go for it? I said, well, I went by the book. He said, Ron, there is no book. Trust your instincts, trust your experience, and go out and do those things. And it made me realize what I really wasn't going by the book. I was doing what was safe. You know what I'm saying? I didn't put myself out there. I didn't put us out there. And it's interesting because one of the things that I learned, I started going for it on 4th down, 4th and 1, making those decisions and converting. But what it was telling my players was that I trusted them. I believe that we can get that yard. I believe we can get that 1st down when we need to get that 1st down. And if we don't, I believe our defenses go out there. So what I was doing was, sure, I was doing the safe thing, the easy thing, but I wasn't doing the hard thing that was showing my commitment that I really, truly believed in us as a football team. So my 3rd season as a coach in the NFL, I started going for it on 4th down. And we started converting. The more we did it, the more confident we did it. And what happened was that season, I was 9 for 10 on 4th down situations that year. And we didn't convert only 1 of them. And it didn't cost us. But going for it those 9 different times meant a lot to our players. And it was just real interesting, just the comments that they would tell me, hey, Coach, thanks for believing. Hey, Coach, hey, that's it. We got you back no matter what. That's special. When the guys recognize it, see it, feel it, and know it. That's important. That gives you a chance to succeed, that you're showing people that, hey, I'm committed to us. I believe in us. I know we can.
Wow, Ron, that's what an example. And my mind goes, and I want to ask you one, if I could apply it to one other thing with you, which is this idea of doing the safe thing, and you know, is really kind of interesting when it comes to leadership, because leadership, in a way, we've spent $16 billion a year trying to create better leaders without much success. And most of the time what leaders do is they revert to the safe thing that has always been done everywhere before, which isn't all that interesting most of the time when they want to be different. I mean, it sort of seems to apply in your example, which is if we're always doing the safe thing, we'll never do the different thing, and therefore we'll never be different. It seems to apply to that too, right?
Oh, most certainly, because, you know, it's interesting going back and looking at that year. It was 2013. And as I said, I was coming off of, 2 years where we were disappointing. We had opportunities to win and we didn't. And the only way to create those opportunities were to think outside the box, to play outside the box, and to do things differently, which gave us a chance to win. And we did those things. We did the things that we needed to, and we gave ourselves that chance. And lo and behold, the players felt it. And that's how we grew, because they realized, and I realized, that I could trust these guys. I should trust these guys. I will trust these guys. And by doing that, they began to really feel the same thing for each other. Man, I want the ball in this guy's hands. I want to block for this guy. I want to give my guy a chance, our quarterback, an opportunity to find that receiver open downfield. Or, man, I'll tell you what, our defense will come through. Our guys up front they'll knock them back. Our linebackers will make plays, and we'll get the ball back and give ourselves a chance to win. I mean, those are the kinds of things that you create by going out and taking a chance. And again, these weren't willy-nilly chances either. To me, these were calculated guesses. These were these were things that I relied on my experience of having been there in those situations and knowing that, hey, this is the right opportunity to take that chance. Not every time is the right time. I can recall one time during that season in 2013 that we didn't go for it. Okay. And I can remember being highly criticized on television when I didn't go for it. And everybody goes, oh, he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have punted the ball. He'll never get the ball back. But my thinking was, man, we have played such great defense all day. Our punter's done a great job kicking that ball inside the 20, keeping them backed up, and then we've gotten the ball back with a chance. And that's exactly what happened. I didn't go for it in that instance. I punted. We got the ball down. We had them back up in their own near their own goal line. We got them out 3 and out, and they punted to us. We got the ball back, got a chance, and we drove down, scored the touchdown to win the game. So I didn't always do what people thought was the right thing. I did the thing that I believe was the right thing to do. Okay. And at that point, it was to be conservative. At that point, it was to do the calculated thing, and that was to rely on another part of our team. And if I had never done that, we would have never known. So again, and it's funny because if you look at it, you could sit there and say, well, that was the calculated risk, coach, was that you punted. Instead of going for it, you said the better opportunity, the better chance we had was to punt. And it was. It turned out to be the right thing to do.
You know, it fits the research about entrepreneurs too, Ron, which is that they aren't risk takers just for taking risk. They are very good risk managers. They're not tied to the safe thing all the time, but they're tied to the smart thing because they manage risk really effectively. And really, I wonder how many times we fail to experience life because we are so tied to safety, right? But it would be a mistake to think that smart people just automatically take willy-nilly risk, because that's just not what happens, is it?
No, it's not. It's interesting because, we have an analytics department, and I get a lot of the analytics on what it says to do on 4th down. I don't look at that as that's written in stone, that's what you're supposed to do. I think I look at that and I say to myself, that tells me that this is what my chances are. And I always look at percentages and always say, okay, if that's really good, but yet this is really bad and it's a low number and it's enough to sway you. What if you got to keep in mind though, what if you're that 1%, that one time it doesn't work? So that's the thing that I always have to take into account. And I always do think about those things now. I mean, 2013 was an enlightening period for me in terms of willing to take risk, but calculated, to where today, having all this information, all it is a tool to help me make what I believe is the best decision. And it's interesting because if I make that decision today, I go all in. I just, hey, I've done enough. I've understood enough. I've learned enough that when I'm doing it, I'm going to do it with everything I got.
Great. There was a thing that you have outlined that I ended up, when you were talking, just feverishly taking notes about what we control.
Oh, yes.
I think one of the more interesting things ever is to focus on the things you can control.
Yep. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is that people look at all the outside things and you can't manage those. You can't control those. But there are 3 things that I truly believe that you control individually, and that's your attitude, your preparation, your effort. I call it your inner APE. The attitude, I think, is one of the things that when I played for the Chicago Bears in 1985, okay, and attitude doesn't mean this cheery disposition. It means the way you approach things, the way you look at things, the way you handle things, okay? For us in 1985, we got off the bus. We were so confident in who we were. We knew we were going to do certain things that we got off the bus. The way we got off the bus, people looked at us and said, man, they're already up 7 points. And we haven't even stepped a foot on the field yet. It was our attitudes, the way we approached things, the way we looked at things. That was what was really something that helped us. We felt confident about who we were. And part of it was because of our preparation, how hard we practiced, the way we practiced, how we learned, how we developed into this team. It's like they say, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. Well, we weren't like that. We prepared, we practiced, and we did things the right way every day. And then when we played with tremendous effort, a championship effort in order to become a champion. And so those are the things that you can control. I can't control that. All I can do as a coach is facilitate that. But the way you approach every day, it goes back to that old expression about, hey, be where your feet are. If you're in practice, be in practice. If you're in the classroom, be in the classroom. If you're at home with the family, be at home with the family. If you do those things, if you control the things that you control and don't worry about the outside, you give yourself a better chance. And as I said earlier, to me, it is, you have to know the difference between what's important and what's interesting.
Yeah, and it almost seems like when you say that, I was taking in my notes before, which was, they're almost cultural attributes. If I can get everybody in the team to believe that being in the present, in the moment, in those things, being mindful of all those, and if the team is a more positive, more confident attitude and better prepared, and we believe that's who we are as a team, then the team takes on an identity very, very much like the individual you described, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I do believe that more so than anything else. I do believe that, if a team comes in and lives by a certain set of core values, okay, and understands what the ultimate goal is, okay, sure, the prize is to win the Super Bowl, but to me, the ultimate goal is to build a sustainable winning, okay, culture that says that culturally we're going to come together, we're going to work together, we're going to sacrifice together for one goal. That gives us a chance. But if you come in and you have 2 or 3 players that have the mindset that it's about me getting mine so I can get mine, man, you're going to have trouble. It's going to be hard to win. It's going to be hard to be successful. So you have to have a group that all understands and works towards that one goal. And doing that creates the opportunity for the team to have success first and foremost. You'll win. You will win. I believe that too.
Yeah. So Ron, today, in a lot of places, leaders are pretty exhausted. They've downsized, they've right-sized, some of the businesses are coming back, everything's changing. As with you, I mean, you faced this in the turnarounds, but you faced it also when you got cancer at the same time you're taking a new job, and you face this thing where how you show up matters, but it's difficult. And you've overcome those kind of things. You probably have some really good advice for all of us about when life's giving you lemonades and you're busy and you're feeling overwhelmed, and you still, how you show up matters with the team you're trying to put together. Coming out the other side of it, what have you learned that you could share with us?
Going through the situation I did in 2020, as we were trying to build our team, and we had a certain set of core values, we had an ultimate vision with the ultimate goal, and we were working towards those things. Those still held true to me personally when they told me, Coach, you have cancer. Okay. The first thing we did was I had my team. Okay. I had my doctors and I had my family, and we were going to come together and we were going to win because we shared in one vision. And the vision was my overall health. The plan was we were going to follow the doctor's directives to the T. And we were going to go out and we were going to do that. And doesn't matter to me whether it's in business or it's in life, but if you have that vision with that plan, with that goal, you can be successful. And that's what we did. And we stuck to it. One thing we didn't do is we didn't Google anything. And the reason we didn't Google anything, because that was interesting. That wasn't important. What was important was, again, the plan of action. We stuck to the plan of action because that was important. And when we did hear something that was out here, no, that's interesting. No, let's keep the focus on the plan. Let's keep the focus on what's important. And so I think understanding that you have to stay focused on the important thing and don't be distracted by the interesting thing. You can accomplish anything. You can reach your goals. You can be what you want to be.
Ron, a couple quick questions. What are you reading? Do you have time for reading anything with all the practices you're running?
Yeah, we do, real quick. Let me grab them from over here. I'm reading Legacy. James Kerr wrote this about the All Blacks rugby team. Okay. And I read The Power of Positive Leadership by John Gordon. All those, these types of things I find very interesting, because a lot of these things are things that, that, oh, wow, that pertains to rugby. Well, no, that pertains to life. Okay. Power of positive leadership, all that pertains to business. No, that pertains to life. So when I read something like that, I'm reading it really to learn, to grow as an individual. But for fun or enjoyment, I also like to read books of biographies. I'm reading a book about Winston Churchill right now. It's an interesting book because it talks about his leadership style and who he was. And I think as you think about somebody who had to deal with something during the darkest time in his country's history, and how, he led this country through it and really kind of, I don't want to say saved the world, but kept the world in a good place. That's pretty powerful. So I enjoy reading, I enjoy learning. But for the most part, it's kind of hard when you don't have the time.
It certainly is. Two leaders, living or dead, who most influenced your thinking or you most admire?
Well, first and foremost, I got to say, I Winston Churchill is really one of my favorites. I've read a lot about him, and I think it really has influenced me and impacted me an awful lot. Gosh, the next one, I always go back to my father, and I really do mean this. When my dad coached me growing up, he coached me in baseball, and when he was coaching us, he was in the Army, and he would come from his office, from his company, in his uniform, and he would take his uniform off, his fatigues, his shirt, put his coaching shirt on and his coach's hat on, and he would be all in. It goes back to be where your feet are. He was on the ball field and he was coaching. Well, one game in particular, it was a Little League baseball game, and we had this pitcher, and his dad was a major. So every time this kid would be up there pitching, he'd be doing well, and then something would happen, and his dad would say something out loud. Come on, son, get the ball over the plate. Come on, son, hit that ball. And you could hear the voice, but you could also see the guy kind of shrink a little bit, the kid. So one day in this one game, the dad was riding his son pretty good. And all of a sudden, my dad takes off his baseball hat, takes off his coach's shirt, put his fatigue shirt back on, put his hat back on, with his rank on top of it. This guy was a major. My dad was a chief warrant officer. My dad walked out of the dugout, walked all the way around, and went over to the major, saluted him, said something to him, and came back. And nothing. We didn't hear anything from the major the rest of the game, and the kid ended up playing a pretty good game. So that evening at dinner, I remember my mom asking my dad, said, Gino, what did you say to the major? Well, he said, Dolores, I just said to him, sir, with all due respect, please let me coach your son. And that was it. But for me, watching that, I was 12 years old, and it spoke to two things. One is the chain of command. And two was, you have to be willing to do the right thing. And as a coach at that point in time, the right thing was to go up and in the right way, with all due respect, ask to, hey, let me coach, let me do my job. And I'll never forget that I learned that lesson when I was 12 years old. And sometimes it kind of goes to that story. You got to tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. It made an impact on me. So when I talk about leadership, I always think about my dad just because of that type of situation, knowing what he's gone through and knowing what he's done to be successful.
Wow. Last question for me, Ron. Well, I'd like to have met your dad. That's what I'm kind of thinking in my head for a second. One thing, if a young leader comes up to you and says, Coach, just one thing I can take with me, just one thing you could give me that would shorten my trails, what would it be?
There's so many things I would tell them. I would tell them first and foremost is be true to who you are, more so than anything else. Nothing matters more to me than the good name on the back of my jersey. Okay, it's next to my parents' love. It's the greatest gift I've ever been given, and that's my good name. And I guard that. I believe in it, and I never ever want to do anything to tarnish it. So I try to be true to who I am, more so than anything else, because at the end of the day, I want to be able to be proud of the things that I've done. My ultimate goal is to win a Super Bowl doing it the right way. I don't want to be able to say, well, he did this in the spirit of the role. No, I want people to say he did it the right way. And if it comes down to cheating to win, I'm going to lose it every time, because I'm not going to do that. I can't, because at the end of the day, it's what's on the back of my jersey that matters. And I want to do it the right way. And I think that's important.
Well, Ron, I can't thank you enough for taking the time coming off the practice field to talk with us this morning. I believe to my soul that leaders like you who want to do it the right way, taking the time to share with us what you've learned along the way can help us go a long way to getting better. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your energy, and probably most importantly, I thank you for your authenticity. Thank you for that, Ron.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you, Gary.
And I'd also like to thank the Washington Speakers Bureau for its continued support of these conversations in which we can learn how we might build better teams that learn to win the right way, as Ron just described. And I thank you for listening. Thanks again, Ron. Hope to see you soon.
All right.